everyone, welcome back to our YouTube channel. In today's video, we'll be exploring how to create your CSS animation effects. So let's get started. Here we have a div element that represents a container. It is used here as a wrapper for the content. Next we have an heading element that represents a text rotating shadow. Next we have a paragraph element that contains some placeholder text commonly known as lorem ipsum. Now let's add some CSS. Here we have a universal selector. The box sizing is set to border box and the font family is set to sans serif. Next we have a body selector. Here the display is set to flex so that it makes the body as a flex container. Justify content and align item is set to center. Width is set to 100%. Height is set to 100 VH. Overflow is set to hidden. And the margin is set to 0 so that it removes the default margin around the body. And the back face visibility is set to hidden. It improves performance by hiding the back face. Next we have a div selector. Here the position is set to relative. The display is set to flex. The justify content and align item is set to center. Flex direction is set to column so that it arranges the flex item vertically in a column. Width and height is set to 65% viewport minimum. Background is set to white. And the padding is set to 5 viewport minimum. Border radius is set to 2 viewport minimum so that it adds rounded corner to the div by setting the border radius. Next we have a div h2 selector. Here the font size is set to 6% viewport minimum. Line height is set to 100%. Font weight is set to 600. Color is set to black. And the text island is set to center so that it centers the horizontally with the h2 element. Next we have a div paragraph selector. Here the font size is 3 viewport minimum. Line height is 150% so that it sets the spacing between line. Font weight is set to 600. Color is set to black. And the padding left is set to 8% viewport minimum. Border left is set to 2 pixels solid navy so that it adds a border with a width of 2 pixels. Margin is set to 6 viewport and 0. It sets the top and bottom margin. Next width is set to 100% and the overflow is set to hidden. It hides any content that overflow the paragraph element. Next we have a before schedule element. Here we set the position to absolute. Width is set to schedule element to the width of -2 pixel and the height is set to schedule element to the height to the div -2 pixel. Background is set to white. Border radius is set to 100% so that it creates a circular shape for the schedule element. Filter is set to drop shadow so that it adds a drop shadow effect to the shadow element using drop shadow. Transform box is set to fill box. And WebKit transform is set to fill box, so that it set the transform origin to the center of the shadow element. Next we have a WebKit transform origin. Here it is set to center. Next we set the content. It insert empty content for the shadow element. Z index is set to -10. It set a negative Z index to move the shadow element. Animation is set to animate shadow rotate 5 second linear infinite. And the last we have keyframes. Here 2 indicates the end state of the animation. Here we set the transform. It rotates the element 360 degree around the Z axis. So that's it for today's video. If you enjoy this tutorial, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more exciting web development tutorials. Thank you.